Dear Pro Wrestling, this is the world's most dangerous podcast, and as the world's most dangerous game, I have to put you on game like only I can. Now, there's going to be some people that aren't going to like some of the things we say on this podcast, and quite frankly, we just don't give a damn. Okay, this ain't a podcast for you. This is a podcast and is a welcoming environment for those who want to know, who want to grow, and want to get through this thing called pro wrestling. Also, for those who understand that we are not your life coaches, we are not your financial advisors, we are simply pro wrestlers that want to see you win and succeed out there. And if you feel like you fit that description, then let's make like Darkwing Duck. Let's get dangerous. Let's lock up and lock in like your very first day of pro wrestling, and let's get into it. And if you understood me right clearly, you heard me say we. And when I say we because it's not just me that is going to be on this. I officially get to welcome my co-host, someone who has 7 years of experience in the professional wrestling business, someone who has won championships throughout the Midwest, someone who has a wealth of knowledge both in and out of professional wrestling. And this person also likes to consider themselves an agent of chaos, and they are the Chaos Goblin themselves, Kevin Kalloway. Welcome to Dear Pro Wrestling.
Thank you for having me, Paragon. It's been a long time in this business, but I know when we were coming up damn near together, we had always had aspirations of this and just to give back. And I am honored to be considered into this position. I'm here for it.
Well, I'm glad to have you here with me because, like you said, we pretty much came up together in this pro wrestling thing. And one thing that we have always pushed and we always set out to do was to make pro wrestling better, to either leave it better than we found it, to leave a positive mark, to leave a positive legacy. Because far too often in pro wrestling, you'll find a bunch of people that are just in it for themselves. They don't love pro wrestling. They just love their place in pro wrestling. A good buddy of mine named Phil Early used to say that. He would say that there are those who love their place and there are those who love pro wrestling. And what I find is it's very hard to get that tribe of people in pro wrestling that want to actually push both the sport and the art forward because they're so stuck in themselves.
Yeah, I agree. It's an ego-driven business. So I truly understand how it becomes that way, but keeping out of that mindset is really how you end up growing and how you end up giving back and how you end up doing so many other things. And making sure we stay humble and understanding where we can go, where we can't yet, or whatever that case may be. It's a wild business, and to get wrapped into your own head, sometimes it just needs to get put on game, right?
Gotta put them on game. And speaking of putting people on game, you talked about the things that we can and cannot do, the places we do and don't want to go, and about it being a wild business. And one thing that I want to definitely talk about in episode 2 of this, and I think it's something that you and I both know all too well, especially recently, is in pro wrestling, you have to fall in love with no.
Oh, it's so important to fall in love with no in so many respects. The one that comes to my mind first and foremost, if I'm talking about no, is when I'm sitting there and I'm talking matches over. That's the first thing I think of. Yeah. And the reason I think of that first is because we as pro wrestlers all understand that we have a bump card. And
we're supposed to understand that we all have a bump card.
You know what? That's fair. We know that there is a bump card. Some of us don't understand when it comes up. But I learned very early to fall in love with no and to cut more things that I end up putting in. Because otherwise I'm going to end up hurt. I'm going to end up injured, and I can't make money in a business if I'm not there, if I'm not in a spotlight.
And the way my envelope is set up.
Now, the way this envelope is set up is.
The way my envelope is set up, I got the checking and the savings, and all my neck and my back is in my savings.
Yeah, I can't make a withdrawal from there. But that's always the first thing I thought of. And given my experience starting to agent matches for major festivals and things like that, is just keeping those bumps low, making them meaningful, making them impactful. I get that sometimes it calls for something larger, but other times you have to understand if it's worth this $30 payday for you to take that, German suplex from the top rope through a table.
I feel like there's this disservice that some wrestling schools and even some wrestling vets put out there for young cats, and it's a matter of like you want to give it your all and you want to always go 110% and you want to leave the fans happy, and though those things are true, there is a way to do that without destroying yourself. I've seen far too many people not be long in this business, have their careers ended short because they're taking those unnecessary risks, or they're afraid to let people know like this is not something that I want to do or I feel comfortable doing. I've been in matches where I actually had to chastise somebody I was in a ring with because I'm like, hey, don't tell me that you're able to do something and then we get out there and you freak out, because that puts either you or myself in jeopardy. And with me either being the vet or me being the face of the company or the locker room leader, whatever may have you, now I'm the one that's looked at like, why'd you put them in that position? No one's talking about you're the one that put us in that position, and there's so many facets of falling in love with no we're going to talk about. First, before we talk about the body, because I feel like that's a very important thing, I feel like we have to first address just the matter of self-worth in professional
Mm,
wrestling. So this whole concept of falling in love with no, I would say, came about with two people, O'Shea Edwards and Suge D, for me. Because that was something that they would always stress. Suge would always follow it up with what will be will be, but O'Shea was very big on you have to fall in love with no, because once you do, you learn how to not only turn those no's into yeses, but to appreciate those yeses. And I feel like a lot of times in wrestling, and sometimes in life outside of it, but we focused and tapped into wrestling right now, is that sometimes we don't always just want that like self gratification of the right now. Sometimes we don't like rejection, which is very human. And sometimes no can cause heat, or no can cause self doubt and self hatred. When sometimes not only do you have to fall in love with no, you have to understand what that no means. Sometimes it's no, not right now. Sometimes it's no, you're not ready. Sometimes it's no, we're not ready. No, we don't have something for you. And then there is sometimes the no nevers. But I myself have turned no nevers into yeses. And I feel like you have to fall in love with no. We can definitely have an episode about turning no's into yeses, and things like that. But I also feel like that's a disservice because we're truly just speaking from our experiences, and everybody's walk down this path of pro wrestling is going to be different. But I do feel like it's universal that we all have been in a situation where we're met with no's, and you got to fall in love with it. So I want to kick this to you real quick and ask you, what would you say is your experience and the many different plights of no's?
my experience is definitely that of something you mentioned when I was first going through, and I was first going through the first 2 years of my career. It was very much getting put into positions where I felt like I had to say yes to some things, or I had to meet them somewhere at a compromise where I still necessarily wasn't, comfortable with it entirely, but I picked something that was less big than the thing that they wanted to do, or at least I felt was less big. And I have plenty of stories on that too. But regardless of that, really the way that I fell in love with no is after I had said yes to something and I truly regretted it. And it still to this day affects me. And I really don't want that to happen to anyone else. And that's my passion for no at this point.
I feel you. I feel you. I know for me, a very pivotal no for me is one of those, and you kind of know a little bit about this. I was thrown to the wolves very early
Mhm.
in this, and the issue that I kept running into, which is kind of going to sound weird, maybe hearing this, was I kept coming out on the other end with pelts. I kept coming out successful being thrown to the wolves,
Mhm.
and what I've learned is in wrestling, you kind of have to fail, and you kind of have to fail early. Because if you get too many wins and too many successes and too many opportunities in the beginning, when you get hit with that twist of fate, it really hits you.
Mhm.
And I went to an ROH tryout back when ROH was its own separate entity. And the requirement was you had to be at least a year into the business for this tryout. And you had to have at least 50 matches. and I was like 6 months in with 25 matches. But I got the tryout. I got the tryout because I was a House of Truth student. I got the tryout because people recommended me. I got the tryout because of other factors, and it was looking like, hey, this guy's going to be a blue chipper because look at all these scenarios we throw at him in 6 months, and he's doing well. And my tryout went awful. Some things weren't my fault. Some things definitely were. Um, and going there with so much hype, I would say, because I mean, like, I remember that was probably the first time I had a Facebook post have over like 600 something engagements and shares and likes and comments and tell us how it went. And then you got to come home and let everybody know I didn't get that contract. I didn't get that opportunity. And hearing that no, I had to first sit back and ask myself, what did this no mean? Is this no never? Is this no not right now? Is this no I'm not ready? And I had a really dope conversation with a vet. And what they said to me is that these are the moments that make and break people. Are you going to evolve or perish from this experience? And literally, it felt like right after this happened, I changed my look, I changed my gear, I changed my physique, I changed my mindset about the business. I got to be in rooms and rub shoulders with people who I got to see on TV later, and I had in my mind of that's going to be me. It just wasn't my time yet. It's going to be me, but my path is going to be different. It's going to be me, and maybe there's something about this opportunity that may not be as great as I think it will be. Which for some people that wasn't the case, and for other people they told me, you might have lucked out, in a situation. But that was a situation where if I did not fall in love with no, I don't think we'd be sitting here right now. I think I would have folded like origami laundry.
And you know what? That's not just true in professional wrestling. It's true in life. In order to get anything that you really want, you have to fail first. Because if you keep succeeding upwards, eventually you're going to run into something that's going to knock you down even further. If you haven't had that adversity to actually get through something, then the second you run into the adversity, when it's a higher stake, it becomes even more difficult to deal with. You haven't run into these problems. You haven't practiced those problem-solving skills. As a teacher by trade, you have to get the F or the D first in order to get the A, because if you keep getting A's, eventually you're going to get hit with a D and not know how to handle it.
And you're going to break down. You're going to break down, and you're not going to know what to do with yourself.
And you know what? I had one of those scenarios when I was going through college. This is an aside, but it's still relevant. Is I went through high school and A's and B's came very easily to me. And then I got chin checked by college, because in college, when I went to class, they didn't give me everything I needed to know. I needed to go home and study. So the real skill that I was missing was not the ability to learn and learn quickly. It was that I needed to learn how to get study habits. But because I didn't have those, I was placed on academic probation the first year. After the first year, I had terrible grades. But come sophomore year, I had a strategy. I came back renewed. I came back after hitting that failure, and it was a big one. I didn't take it well, but I came back and I succeeded anyway. And that's kind of, I feel what you're getting at is just making sure that you're taking these opportunities. And even if it is a no right now, or even if it is a no never, you have to understand how to get back from that, evolve, go forward. Okay, then if that's not my path, let's divert this way. There are many different ways to succeed in professional wrestling, and there are so many opportunities out there. To really perseverate on one opportunity not working out is a disservice to the people who have helped you along the way. And it's also a disservice to yourself, because everybody can do some stuff in this business.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody.
And also that money you paid just to be in this business, you're just going to throw that away. And honestly, you talked about how this just falling in love with no just expands beyond just wrestling. It's a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
If you take it in romantic terms, that couple that never fights and everything always goes so well, the moment they get into that first fight,
could be a bad one.
and then you see couples crumble. You see these perfect couples, first fight, and everything goes out the window. All that hard work, all those things that you worked towards and worked for, they go straight out the window. And Then you also have the same merit of this person is in this relationship, they get that heartbreak, and now they don't want to put themselves out there again because they're trying to protect themselves. Now you are stopping yourself and doing yourself a disservice from your own future, from potentially who your person may be, whatever may have you. And that's like wrestling. All it takes is one bad day to define you. And what I mean by
Mhm.
that is you can have a situation of the ROH tryout. You can have a situation of being in a match that maybe you weren't ready for and it doesn't go the way you want. You can have the situation of you do a spot you probably shouldn't have done and you got hurt. And now it's a matter of, okay, do you learn and do you grow from this, or do you become bitter and do you struggle and do you quit? It's literally the phase of, do you become bitter or do you become better?
Yeah.
And I feel like if you fall in love with no, you know, because some people say they are obsessed with success, and I'm not saying that's a problem, but I also feel like in their own ways they are also in love with no because they are determined to turn no's into yeses. I
Hmm.
mean, I look at the sports analogies of if you want to go basketball, for instance, the people that they constantly put in GOAT conversations are Kareem, Jordan, LeBron, and Kobe. And a lot of times it's because these dudes were obsessed with being great. They were obsessed with success, and they still face their hardships and their failures. You can say whatever you want about Jordan being 6-0, in finals. Okay, how many first round and second rounds did he get knocked out? How many times did he get beat up and not make playoffs because of the opposition he was facing? But he didn't let
Hmm.
that stop him. And I look at someone like The Rock, for instance. The Rock thought football was going to be his life. You know, that didn't work out. He had to hear no. And when he heard that no, then what did he do? He went up to Canada. He thought, okay, Canadian football is going to get me to the NFL. He heard no. What did he do? He went to pro wrestling. All right, Rocky Maivia and paying tribute to my family. That's going to do it. He heard no. Then he became The Rock. Then he went to Hollywood, and I'm pretty sure he's heard no multiple times there as well. You got guys like Eddie Guerrero. The guy was told he was too small. The guy was told that his demons were too big. The guy was told all these things. And yet, though he's no longer with us, there are so many people who are influenced by the impact he made by turning his no's into yeses. And I feel like far too often we hear no and we allow no to be the end of it. And that's another thing when it comes to falling in love with no. Falling in love with no doesn't mean accepting no.
No.
Falling in love with no does not mean accepting defeat. Falling in love with no is accepting that in this moment there is something in your way. What are you productively and positively going to do to get through, over, around, under, whatever you got to do to get to that other side of it? But I feel like even in me saying this, somebody's not hearing what I'm saying. I'm not telling you, no don't mean no. This ain't this. What I'm saying is, in this sport of professional wrestling, in this art of professional wrestling, more doors will close in your face than will open.
Hmm.
Even people who have been signed, who even been successful while they were signed, they will tell you how many times they've pitched ideas. No. How many times they had a goal they wanted to accomplish. No. How they felt like a ceiling was put on them because no. And then think about how many of those people you still look up to. How many of those people still were able to be successful? How many of those people were able to supersede and combat that?
And you know what? There's so many people who they might end up with a no in the wrestling business, but then turn it into another business too.
Yep.
I've seen plenty of that as well. They get a no from, maybe they're a superstar at WWE, but they never really crack through whatever card you want to view it as. They never crack into the card, maybe. But then they leave the business and then they're doing something to better the business anyway. Take a look at Chris Nowitzki and how he's helped with a lot of like lawyers and laws and concussion stuff. Like all of that is a very give back to the business. That's huge. Like even though there were no's there, or even though there was something that maybe he should have said no to, and then there's an injury or whatever the case may be. I don't know his personal story, but there's something there in taking those no's and going, how can I better myself, instead of sitting there and going, oh my God, it's a no, let's leave. It shows such power as a human being to take those no's and failures and turn those into something else, turn those into something great. And that's how you really leave a legacy anywhere in life.
Oh yeah. And we talk a lot about falling in love with no when it comes to rejection. And it's hard, because as entertainers, as athletes, as performers, we hear no in many different ways. Sometimes it's no, I don't want to buy your merchandise. No, I don't want to cheer for you or boo you. No, I don't want to have you in my carload. No, I don't want to, give you this opportunity. No, I don't see you in this position on the card. No, I don't see you holding this championship. No, I don't see you in a match with this person. So just to put y'all on game, the world's most dangerous game came about as a persona because I was told by a promoter who I'm very, very close with that he didn't see me in a match with a particular opponent because to him it didn't make sense. I was the entertaining guy. I was the fun guy. I was the guy that got the crowd hype. I'm not the guy he sees in main events. And when he told me that, now mind you, I have been in main events of other companies, but he told me that, and that made me go, you know what? I'm going to be everything I stopped myself from being before. And that's where my mindset changed because the thing is, that was someone telling me no. And I could have, I'm mad now. I don't mess with this person no more. I'm not whatever. No, I said, okay, it's time to evolve. It's time to make you recognize who you're sleeping on. A lot of people want to say people are sleeping on them. Everybody's sleeping on me. Well, you gave them the melatonin. What are you going to do? What are you going to do to wake them up?
You forced it down their throat. What are you going to do to wake them up? Yeah,
exactly. But, rejection is hard. Someone hearing this right now is potentially struggling with that. They are trying to get themselves out there. They're trying to get an opportunity. They're trying to be seen, whether it be by the few or the masses. Don't let no stop you. Let no fuel you. I try not to talk about being petty, but be spiteful. Be spiteful in a positive way, Like be spiteful in your convictions. When someone tells you no, let that motivate you. Let that fuel you. Allow it to make you better instead of bitter.
It's that chip on your shoulder mentality that they talk about in sports. It's cool. It's cool to use that chip on your shoulder. You just don't want to take it out on people. It's the equivalent of like in soccer. I'll just use soccer because I'm familiar with it. In soccer, if I get a goal scored on me, the chip on my shoulder now is that either I'm a defender and they're not scoring again, or I'm a forward and I go, I'm going to score that goal. Not, I'm going to go kill him with a red card.
Yeah.
That's not useful. That's not going towards your goal. That's only shooting yourself in the foot further. So instead, you have to make sure that you're putting it into meaningful pathways, meaningful uses of things, so that you can better yourself and go forward that way, instead of taking the bullet and putting it through your own foot.
But now we got to talk about the elephant in the room, because the way my envelope is set up, y'all, I don't care if you're young in the business. I don't care if you've been doing this for a while. And I really hope that some of you took in what was being said previously. But truly, don't just fall in love with no when it comes to rejection. Fall in love with no when it comes to hearing something that is truly a dumbass idea, something that is not going to benefit you, something that's going to harm you. And I want to break this down in a couple different ways. So, Kevin, I want us to address falling in love with no when it comes to who you work for, and then falling in love with no when it comes to who you work with.
You know what? I'll add another one. I'm going to say falling in love with no, because it's not necessarily who you work with all the time. I do agree it's part of it, but I think another part to that is even when you're working with people who you can trust and are safe in the ring, I think it's falling in love with saying no to some of the ideas that get brainstormed.
Well, that's what I'm meaning when I say who you work with.
Fair enough.
Because when you're in that ring, I don't care if you are my best friend. I don't care if I can't stand you. I'm not doing a Canadian destroyer off the top rope through a table on the outside of the ring, No.
The way that my envelope is set up, it doesn't do Canadian destroyers.
Yeah. Like, I can't stand that. But also, I feel like another no you need to fall in love with. You need to fall in love with no when it comes to just common sense.
Yeah.
So I want to jump point from that, and then we'll go to fall in love with no when it comes to common sense. If somebody is not having the best reputation, maybe you don't need to travel with them.
Hmm.
If somebody is doing things that can definitely hurt or harm your image, as I talked about in the last episode, you are a brand, you are a product. So you don't want a spokesperson who has a lot of, negativity attached to them being the person who is now promoting your brand. You got to watch who you travel with. Sometimes someone's going to ask to hop in your carload. You have to tell them no. Someone's going to ask you to hop in their carload. You're going to have to tell them no. Someone's going to ask you, hey, can I get you this booking or can you be a recommendation for this booking for me? You have to tell them no because you have to look at how this person is going to affect your brand.
And that's a nail on the head. There are so many times where, you'll put up a status because you happen to have an open seat in a car, or you happen to be able to go somewhere and give someone an opportunity. You're hoping some people who you can trust answer the message, answer the comment, whatever. But there are some times where, you see people and how they, and this is going to be a whole nother episode, so I don't want to get into it far. Just that the etiquette on social media, the etiquette on everything. That's the only impression you have of these people. And then you see them at a show, and then maybe they're getting a little too comfy in the locker room too quickly. And it's just, you see everything that you present once you're out of your house, and even sometimes in it, can be a huge detriment to how people view you and how it can affect their brand. So, without diving into that too much and sticking with the topic at hand, that no, it could be a no, not right now, and it could be a no, never, depending on what you've done there. And those opportunities do go away depending on what you do.
Mm-hmm.
Man, and yeah, just saying no and making sure you're protecting your brand first and foremost. I can't take a liability on somebody who's going to talk crap on the internet. I just can't.
And I can't take a chance on somebody who's going to do something in a locker room that makes me look bad. Because also, people don't realize this. When you recommend somebody for a show, you are now responsible for them, even if you aren't on that show.
Mm-hmm.
And now that person is responsible for every other person that may ask for your recommendation.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on that too, I book for Electric Forest every year now. Well, not every year, but every year they'll have us. And man, years in the business is not the first thing that I think of when I'm looking to see who I want to put on that show, because every single year they're putting over us as wrestlers as the people who are the most professional and the people who are there doing the most and on time, everything. That's what I take pride in. We go there and they say, oh, it's the wrestlers. We don't have to worry about them. They have to worry about everybody else in the festival, but not us.
Which is funny
That's what I
because
care
so
about.
often you hear it everywhere else differently.
Mm-hmm.
But when you put together that environment and you know who to say no to, that makes all the difference,
That's the key.
And I'm very big on protecting your brand. Because like I said, when you recommend people, let's say I recommend Kevin for a show and Kevin shits the bed, right?
Terrible.
And then somebody who's a mutual friend of me and Kevin wants me to recommend them for a show, and I recommend them. That booker and promoter is already like, well, you already recommended Kevin to us. We saw how they did. We don't trust your word anymore. And also, that potentially also affects your stock in the company or the card because they're like, if these are the type of people you associate with, you may be good in the ring, but we don't know what type of person you are. But to segue from that one, I then want to talk about falling in love with no. Because I feel like falling in love with no with what you do in the ring is going to be what people are really wanting to hear. I'm going to talk about, let's talk about falling in love with no with who you decide to work for.
Yeah. There's phases of when you should say no to certain people too, isn't there? It's wild to me because at the beginning, there's plenty of promotions out there. And there's plenty of promotions at different levels out there. So at the beginning, when you're first getting out of wrestling school, your body is still chipper, you're still feeling good. Going to a lot of promotions and just trying to get some experience is probably the right idea. That being said, after you get that experience, you got to start saying no to some places. And that's for a multitude of reasons. One might be, they're just not respecting me as much anymore. Or maybe you're seeing that you're working with the same people and you can't get better if you stay at the same place working with the same people. But not only that, if you intend to actually make a business of this, you're going to have to leave your home state. It's just going to happen. But you can't do that if you're bogged down with 10 million bookings.
Also, we talk about the way our envelope is set up. Not every envelope is worth it.
No.
Because there's some people, we talk about protecting your brand. Sometimes working for certain companies will affect your brand.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes working for certain companies is going to make it so people don't want to touch you. It's, you work for them? Yeah, nah, we're not gonna mess with you. And you know what? I told you this is about pushing the art forward. This ain't about tearing people down. There is a company in Indiana, and when people work for this company in Indiana, you have a few conversations. There's the, hey, I know you're a good person. You probably don't know better. You probably should not work for this company anymore because people will not use you. And then there's the, hey, since this person is working for this company, everybody in the area just don't use this person.
Oof.
And it's because the reputation of that place. And I know that promotion does not pay super duper well if they pay anything. So getting those reps in, the reps are important. There are other places and other ways to do so. It is not worth your brand being tainted. And sometimes you have to just say, hey, like, I can't do it. I can't do it. It's not worth it. Sometimes wrestlers have a really bad sense of loyalty to the wrong things and the wrong people in the wrong places.
It's crazy because in this business, it feels like loyalty happens and then it never goes away. Because even when I've seen so many instances where a wrestler will work for a promotion and then they'll get screwed by that promoter like 3 or 4 times, but they'll keep coming back for the same screw job envelope. And it's because, they broke them into the business. And like, more power to you. I'm happy that you got the first opportunity through that person, but don't keep going back for the same tainted envelope because you have this blind sense of loyalty.
Yeah, I have been somebody who has been burned by a lot of people and been burned by a lot of places. And I've had some of those people in those places reach out and, hey, buddy, how you been? Or, hey, we want to book you for a show. No, I'm good. No, thank you. Or you can pull a Marlon Wayans and give him a fuck you rate.
That's my favorite.
I'm always big on, and here's the catch-22. Here's the catch-22 because every once in a while someone's gonna pay that fuck you rate.
Yeah, they are though.
And when they pay that fuck you rate, it's like, oh shit. Well, I gotta do it now.
There. Damn.
Yeah, sometimes they're going, but even when somebody pays you that fuck you rate, it's like you gotta ask yourself, is this worth it? Yeah. And I feel like that conversation also goes to yourself of what do I want out of my career? Do I want to be known as the guy that works these shindies? Do I want to be known as the guy that is willing to work for abusers or pedophiles or sympathizers or whatever? Like, do I want to be known as the guy who is willing to work on a show where someone's willing to book and accuse and even proven, such and so most? Like, I'm not going to go into the whole detail of it because it is what it is, but you got to ask yourself what is good to your brand. And sometimes you got to fall in love with no when it comes to yourself. Sometimes you got to tell yourself no. Yeah. You may want something. You may want something so bad, and this opportunity. But in here and in your heart and in your head, this something's up with it. Yeah. Something's up with it, or there's going to be long-term effects. And the short term is nice, but the long term, like, hey, tell yourself no. But we got that elephant in the room, no, Kev.
We got that elephant, man. And you know what? I know I know some people have reached out to you for some nice advice for people who are newer in the business. And I think this is going to be that part where you say lock in, lock up.
Oh yeah, lock up and lock in.
That's the one.
I need you to put
Because
your knee
right
pads
now
on.
this is about to be the good stuff. And not to say that the rest wasn't, but man, this could be some advice that saves your life.
So I don't care if you are green. I don't care if you've been doing this for a while, but I definitely, because I had someone who was green ask me for advice, and I'm gonna try to do something every single episode. So I feel like everything I say is advice of all experience levels, but especially from my green kids.
Mm-hmm.
If, because I'm getting hyped.
Getting worked up.
All right, yeah, I'm about to start hand boning and shit. So I'm gonna start off here. I'm gonna ease into it. First and foremost, if you don't feel comfortable taking it, if you don't feel comfortable doing it, if you have not practiced it or practiced it to a level of your comfort, not only do you not do it yourself, but then when somebody asks you to do it, the answer is no. If someone asks you to give it to them, the answer is no. If somebody says, "Hey, can you give me a power bomb?" but you don't feel comfortable giving power bombs, the answer is no. If someone says to give you a power bomb, your reply should be, "Hey, I don't feel comfortable taking those. I'm not trying to be, whatever. It's just I haven't taken one in a while, or maybe we didn't learn those."
You know what? I have a stock response that I like to give people. It works for people who are also greener in the business, these green kids out there. And I don't think I can make that look good. Because if you're taking the blame off of yourself, you are telling them no extensively. But conversationally, you're putting it on yourself. You're the green kid here. You can use that to your advantage to say no. Because if you're not making their move look good, why are they doing it to you?
But as the green kid, though,
mm-hmm.
because I've been in these rooms and I've heard these things, if they say, "Let's go practice it," or "We can try it before the show starts," that's when you stand your ground and say, "I'm not trying to be difficult. I just don't feel comfortable."
Yeah, because then you can go further. Yeah,
because you're going to run into it. You're going to run into people who are going to try to talk you through it, walk you through it. And this is not me saying, "Oh, don't practice it, don't try it." Do that in practice. Do that in training. Especially because if I'm a promoter and I book you on my show, and if before the show starts you get hurt practicing something, you just cost me a match.
Oh yeah.
And now I'm pissed. Because I have been on shows where someone got hurt playing a game of pickup basketball before the show started, and they were the main event.
Jesus.
And so that's where I'm like, you got to say no. And so we're starting off with, if you're not comfortable taking a move, if you're not comfortable giving a move, if you've not practiced it, that's no number one.
Mm-hmm.
No number two. If somebody does a move that you know or you have heard that it doesn't look good and or is not safe when they do it, no.
Say no.
I will tell you from experience. I used to help book for a show. I said this. The promoter said this. Other people in the locker room told this particular wrestler, "Hey, your shoot kicks don't look good and they're not safe. So do not throw them in your match tonight." You know what this person did?
Oh, God.
This person ran to Road Warrior Animal and asked Road Warrior Animal, "Hey, do you think I should do this move tonight?" Road Warrior Animal has no fucking idea who this person is.
You know who you are.
Has no fucking idea who you are. And he goes, "Yeah, sure, why not? If it's what you do and you like doing it, do it." So what they heard is, I'm going to listen to the person who has been where I want to go, not to the people who got me on the show and who are paying me. Ugh. Which, in certain cases, I get it, because there's certain times you have to ask for, forgiveness after the fact, if you have positive results. Well, this person instead did what we told them not to do, and they knocked their opponent out.
Jesus.
And then tried to lie and say, "Oh, well, that was me giving them a receipt because they hurt me earlier in the match." What did they do early in the match? "Oh, they punched me in the face." We rolled back the footage. Not a single strike was thrown from their opponent.
Oh my God.
So now, not only did you not listen to what we said,
Now you lied.
you lied. But as much as we could be upset with that person, we also said it in front of her opponent. No.
Mm-hmm.
And her opponent did not listen to us. Her opponent did what she wanted to do. And her opponent got knocked the fuck out for it. And wanted to be mad for the whole night. And I'm like, I mean, I want to feel for you. But we told her no and you heard it. Why didn't you tell her no?
Yeah. And yeah, like it's two people in there working together. So if you know one thing isn't going to work coming from another person, you have to be able to stand your ground and say no. Because if you can't say no, you're going to end up with something that hurts you. It's just going to happen. It's not a matter of if, it is a matter of when. And it's what happened to me. I was at a show, and one of the people I was working with, they wanted to start the match off hot. It was a world heavyweight title match, and they wanted to start the match off hot. It was like a hardcore-ish place, and they're like, why don't we hit one of you with a glass tube? And in my head, I'm like, absolutely not. We are not wrestling around in glass. I do not do death matches. It's more power to you if you do, but the way that my envelope works is that glass doesn't get stuck into me. But instead, they then offered another thing. And they're like, hey, why don't I give you a chair shot to the head then? And me, not knowing well enough, was like, sure, how do I protect myself? And they gave me a crap way to protect myself. So then I went to go to protect myself. They swing the wrong side of the chair. They level me with it. And to this day, I still get foggy sometimes. So when I'm telling you, people listening, when I'm telling you, it's going to happen at some point if you don't say no and fall in love with no. I want you to believe me, because even though me and Paragon here might be talking a lot of sense to you, there were a time where we were dumber. We did not know as much, and we are just trying to help get that along for you so that you don't run into some of the same stuff that we did.
And there also were times we were prideful because someone told me no, and it was, hey, you were in a car accident. You need to pull out of your booking. Go home and rest.
Oh.
No, don't wrestle. And I said, no, I'm going to go wrestle. And then you know what happened? Lost feeling in my arm and in my neck. And then was supposed to wrestle the following week and couldn't. Or Kevin will tell you, there was a little company called WTF. Somebody had a gauntlet match that they had to be in. They had to run the whole tournament. And the two of us were match one.
Yep.
And repeatedly, was I not having to have people work on me and work on my back, even though they were saying, hey,
the
P,
whole
just,
time, before the first match, Paragon, before the first match, you were sitting there on the couch and we were calling it as people were working out your back. I remember.
But no, I had to wrestle. I had to fucking wrestle. And I'm gonna be real with you. There's people that'll be like, "Oh, well, you sound tough." You know what? To me, that's some very pussy stuff. And I'm saying pussy willow. I'm not talking about vaginas, because let's be honest with you, vaginas are much stronger than balls, because you tap a vagina and it doesn't do much. They give birth. You tap a ball, you done for the whole goddamn
day.
That's accurate. Throw up.
That's accurate.
This is some very, to me, you know what? I'm gonna quote Paul Heyman. He says, show me a hero and I'll show you a coward who has run out of options or a fool who is too stupid to stay down. So don't tell me that was me being tough and that's how the business goes, because to me, that was just me following the monster of the business. In pro wrestling, a lot of times we're told, and I really hope you young guys are listening in right here, that you have to protect your spot. Because if you get hurt or take time off, wrestling's going to keep going. Someone's going to take your spot, and it's a hard way to get back in there. Who cares if you can't walk? Literally, Kevin will attest to it. I was having people help me to the entranceway, and then the music would hit, and I would pretend like nothing was wrong.
Yep.
I was in so much immense pain through all those matches, and yet you would never know, because I have to perform, and I have to do all this stuff for all of my fans. and then would go in the back, and literally I had to have people practically carry me to couches and work on my back and ice packs and this and that, all because it's for the love of the game, right? Because I'm the most dangerous game, right? No, the only thing I was dangerous was what happens when I can't, make it home to the people I love.
Yeah.
What happens when somebody wants to give me a hug, and them hugging me is one of the most painful sensations in my entire life. It's like you gotta sometimes tell yourself no, and say no to these opportunities. Say no when something sounds stupid, like, hey, let me get inside of a barrel. You know where I'm going with it. Go ahead.
I do.
Take it, Kevin. Take it.
So one of our
little
buddies,
brother, our little brother,
our little brother TJ. Shout out to TJ Meyer, Void Walker now. We always joked in a car ride. He didn't actually do it, but I'm pretty sure he would have.
he was going to. No, he was
going
going
to.
to. He had to get talked out of it. So like he didn't do it, but he was fucking going to.
But our buddy, our little brother TJ Meyer, he was about to get talked into getting put in a barrel. And just like jumping off of things because I think it was Darby Allin at the time was doing it. And he was just like, man, it would be cool. Let's do that. And we're like, no, what are you doing? Don't do that.
I'll just drill holes in it so I can still see out of it. That's still a dumb idea. Now you're just watching your demise. Idea. You're watching your demise.
You're just watching yourself go into an injury if you just have eye holes. But also, yeah, like there's so many things to say no to as far as like ridiculous things and it was really painful for me to watch. You have to get help to the back, and just I knew there was nothing I could say to stop it, but it felt powerless in the moment because I didn't want to see my friend hurt.
And it sucks because like I feel like we've all at one point in time been in that position where we want to help our friends, we want to help our family, and we also know there's nothing that we can say to stop them in this moment. They're going to do it regardless, even if we tell them we're upset, we're disappointed, and you can't really like. And it's also tough because like on one end you might want to tell them like I'm proud of you for fighting that out, but on the other end you also like, I'm disappointed because how stupid you were. Because it's like, yeah, you showed you were tough, but what did your toughness accomplish?
But at what cost?
And it's tough. Yeah, and I will say, like, I will say, will I do it again? Yes, and please do not follow my example. And it's because it's the performer in me. I have literally lived on stage since I was 3 years old. When I was a freshman in high school, I was on stage. My meniscus completely tore and separated. My kneecap was on, like, pretty much behind where your knee is supposed to be. And I finished my entire scene before I finally got carted away to the hospital because I was not going to leave that scene until I finished. Because the show must go on, you cannot stop. And the thing is, you tell people this and they might go, ooh, and oh, you're tough, and I'm like, no, that was stupid because I did more damage to my knee finishing the scene. It was going to be just a dislocation with a slight tear. I completely tore it. I have no meniscus right now. I have no MCL right now. It sounds tough because we've created this narrative of what's badass. You know what's badass? Being able to take care of your responsibilities.
You know what's badass? Emotional and mental intelligence. So
that
you can survive in this world to be able to leave a legacy. So you can survive in this world to be able to get the happiness that you want out of it. Because if you can't survive that long, you're going to end up not fulfilling as much as you could have and giving that legacy to people and teaching and doing what you can. So that's badass to me.
And the goal in professional wrestling is that everybody gets home safe.
Yep.
So if the goal is everybody gets home safe, that includes you. You too have to get home safe. And
you're part of that equation.
And if you are doing things to put yourself and others in jeopardy, you're not accomplishing that goal. You're not accomplishing that goal, and you're setting yourself up for failure. And then, one last thing when it comes to saying no. Sometimes a promoter and your opponent are going to ask you to do something, and either it's going to sound stupid or is stupid, or you simply just aren't ready for it. That's not your capacity. You may be a great wrestler, but maybe you're not a high flyer. Maybe you don't do shooting star presses or moonsaults and things like that. Say no. It's okay to say no. It's okay for someone else to get that spot that you want because you are now safe and the match is going to still be good, what is it worth that at a 20-minute match becomes 8 minutes because you scorpions yourself doing a moonsault you've never done a practice before,
Yep.
or you weren't ready for a ladder match because you're afraid of heights, and then either you stayed like a deer in headlights on the ladder or fell off the ladder and freaked out and couldn't catch yourself, and now you're hurt. What good is it that you say, yeah, I'm ready for a death match and a hardcore match, never been in one before, never practiced one, and you do something that either seriously hurts you or your opponent? Not all envelopes are worth your brand. They're not worth your mental. They're not worth your physical. They're not worth the drive. Because I mean, shoot, I have to drive to Columbus, Indiana, Emerge Wrestling. I will have already wrestled and defended my title by the time you guys are hearing this, but I have to drive to Columbus, Indiana to defend my championship. That is a 3.5 hour drive one way, 3.5 hour drive back. And I love to put my body on the line. I love to fight my ass off. I love to put on a production for that crowd, whether they cheer me or whether they boo me. I do it for them. But I also got to get home at the end of the day. I have people counting on me outside of professional wrestling. I have people counting on me in professional wrestling. And what good am I to my people if I put myself in jeopardy, even if it's for the sake of entertainment purposes?
Exactly. I got a dog waiting home. I can't be injured.
I got 2 cats who are trying to interrupt this podcast as we go because they want attention. Now, what happens if I'm over here, Christopher Reeves in it and everything like that? And that's not me trying to be disrespectful. That's me saying, like, Christopher Reeves was in a freak accident and it ruined his whole career. He did some great things afterwards, but you should be able to do things in the place and in the state that you came in. My fiance used to say, like, don't come back with what you didn't leave with. And that wasn't a matter of, like, don't you come back with no babies or no STIs. It was like, hey, like, if you come back with a cast, I'm going to be pissed.
Yeah.
If you come back with a concussion, I'm going to be pissed. Now, the difference is, am I going to be pissed at you or your opponent? Were they the ones being unsafe or were you being stupid?
And, it's fair to ask those with the people that love us and care for us and want to have that relationship with us, because it's a disservice to them if we are deciding to be stupid like that. It is.
And I know we talked about a lot. I mean, shoot, we are 50 something minutes in, and I know the last episode was only like 16.
Well, we got 2 people here sharing stories now.
And on top of that, we really care about what we're saying because we care
do.
about all of you that are listening. And so to sum some of this stuff up before, we hit the go home, rejection sucks, but it is part of what helps your character development both in and outside of wrestling. And when you hear those no's, understand why they're a no, and then do what you can to use those no's as fuel. Because sometimes a place you may want to wrestle isn't even the right place for you. But the fuel that place's rejection gave you will potentially open up doors to even better places where you fit. Yes, you may want to be the main event. You may want to do the cool stuff your friends do. You may want to get as many reps in as you can. But not all money is good money. Not all envelopes are worth it. Not all opponents are going to look out for you. So you got to look out for yourself. And that all comes with falling in love with no. And for somebody right now who may be struggling with rejection, I want you to take a deep breath and close your eyes. And while you're taking this breath and closing your eyes, I want you to think about 5 things right now that you can touch. I want you to think about 5 things right now that you can control. I want you to think about 5 things in wrestling that you can control. Everything outside of that is out of your hands. But what you can control and what you can influence, that's what should concern you, and that's what you need to fall in love with, and use that falling in love with no to fuel those things that you can control to allow yourself to be better instead of bitter.
Absolutely.
You got anything for him before we sign off, Kev?
I'm going to keep it really succinct. Just make sure that you're keeping yourself safe for the people that you care about, because they care for you to be safe.
And the way our envelopes are set up.
If my safety isn't there, I'm not there.
Exactly. Well, we appreciate y'all for locking up and locking in with us. This is not a matter of tearing people down, but building people up. And if you like what we're doing, give us that 5 stars. And also, we're trying to get them followers so that way Grun will shave his head and
Oh
get a
man,
head
I would
tattoo.
love to see him shave his head and get a head tattoo.
We need the head tattoo. But with that being said, we need y'all to check out our people uh, throughout in your house. So check out the pre-show for before Raw. Check out Raw after the bell. Check out the smoke session. Check out the watch-alongs. Check out the Sunday house party. Do what you got to do. And hey, you don't have to take our advice because at the end of the day, fuck do we know? We're just pro wrestlers.
We're just pro wrestlers.
Sincerely, Kevin Kalloway, Paragon, Dear Pro Wrestling.